Hit me with some drums, Drew. Now back into the synth. Oh yeah. Coming at you now with Mystery Mondays. We're coming your way every Monday,
Every single one.
oh yeah. What we got in store for you tonight? Who even knows? Drew knows that's right.
It's his turn.
Aliens or Sasquatch, or poor little missing kids. Who knows what'll come? But we'll have some fun.
Alright.
Yes, we'll have some fun. Alright. With Mystery Mondays, I'm stuck in a haze. 'Cause the synthesizer's banging all night. Alright. Yeah, it's Mystery Mondays, and I'm stuck in a haze. Yes, we're all in a daze. With Mystery Mondays. Alright. Take flight. Don't fight. Just take in the sultry sounds and mysteries of another Mystery Monday.
Alright.
Welcome back to Mystery Mondays, everyone. Cool, I actually really like that intro.
Yeah, that was a good
I think that was one of my
I
favourites.
was loving that, man.
That was from the heart.
Flow state. That was
That
full
was
flow
pure
state,
flow
wasn't it? Yeah, I was really enjoying that. I'm looking forward to listening to that back already.
I just need to get my coordination going so I can play the drums and play the synth at the same time.
To be fair, man, that's next level though, isn't it? You know? That's
I
like
need to get
supreme
that.
level. That's way beyond.
Split my brain in half and give one task to each.
Yeah, that'd be like that movie Lucy. Do you know what I mean? You know where like Scarlett Johansson managed to open up like 100% of her brain.
Oh man, I haven't
She
seen
can do
it.
mental stuff.
Isn't that like based on an older film as well? There's an old film called or something that it's based
Called
on.
Tracy.
Called Tracy. I thought it might have been Lucy as well. Actually, does she go to a high school and F everything up at the high school and
Oh, you're on about Carrie, mate.
Carrie, that's what I'm on
That's
about.
like a horror movie.
That's
about a girl that's like really badly abused.
Mm.
And then she gets pushed to the limit and then just unlocks all these like crazy psychic abilities and just kills everyone.
Yeah.
Like brutally. Yeah, that's a good movie though, Carrie.
Yeah.
Spoiler alert.
Spoiler. It's good.
But yeah, Drew's got a mystery for us today.
Yeah, man.
I'm looking forward to it as always. Just like you fair listeners, we do not know what the mystery will be. So I'm looking forward to delving into this. We do have an inkling that it's something to do with aliens.
Hashtag aliens.
Hashtag aliens, baby.
Oh
I always
my.
like to do something about aliens because I love aliens.
Yeah, me too. Don't love a bit of alien
Yeah, I love a
action.
bit of alien action.
I do love that you've always got the alien in the background whenever you tell an alien story as well.
Oh, there he
He's
is.
Watching over
He's
you.
watching.
I like the idea that he's spying on us.
Reticuli.
Yeah.
Zeta reticuli.
Oh god, Drew's already getting possessed again.
Reticuli.
Drew's very susceptible to the powers of beyond.
Probe.
Probe, anal probe.
So are you ready to listen to the story of the abduction of Betty and Barney Hill?
I'm almost
am
ready,
ready.
but I feel like there's a finishing touch that I need to get in place.
What could it be?
Do you know what the word seminal means?
Seminal
does-
bliss.
Is it? I want to say it's the seminal account of an alien abduction, which in my head means like the first really crazy big one.
I'd probably go along with that.
I
Makes
don't know if
sense to me.
seminal is the word for it, but that's what I
I'll
want
tell
to
you
say.
what, I'll look up
Seminal
officially.
seems like important.
Seminal.
Yeah,
for some
like
reason.
important. Like
Seminal
seminal.
definition. Let's have a look. Strongly influencing later developments.
Yes,
That's
so
what
it
it
is.
means.
It's the seminal story of abduction that happened in the 60s.
Yeah, let me find. Let's have a look. Right, I'm gonna get some cracking music for everyone today. You ready for this?
Yeah.
You ready for this?
Something very alien.
Futuristic, dark, sci-fi ambience.
That sounds good.
Mmm.
We're going to have to stitch up all of the intros at some point as well and just make a bed out of them.
Yeah. Oh yeah. Oh yeah. Got to be done, man. Yeah, fully. Take a moment. Take a moment to clear your mind as we prepare
breath into
to
your bellies.
immerse yourself completely in today's mystery.
Which is the abduction of Betty and Barney Hill. Is it chasing us? That thought coursed through Betty and Barney Hill's minds as they drove down the empty, winding country road in New Hampshire's White Mountains. It was a September night in 1961. They hadn't seen a car for miles, and a strange light in the sky seemed to follow them. When they finally got home to Portsmouth at dawn, they were far from relieved. They felt dirty. Their watches stopped working. Barney's shoes were strangely scuffed, and Betty's dress was ripped. There were 2 hours of the drive that neither of them could remember what had happened. With the help of a psychiatrist, the quiet couple eventually revealed a startling story. Grey beings with large eyes had walked them into a metallic disc, as wide, Betty said, as her house was long. Once inside, the beings examined the couple and erased their memories. Their experience would kick off an Air Force inquiry, part of the secretive initiative Project Blue Book that investigated UFO sightings across the country. The incident would also become the first ever widely publicised alien abduction account and shape how stories like it were told and understood from then on. Debate continues as to whether the husband and wife were liars, fanaticists, crackpots, or simply sleep-deprived people who later recovered seriously scrambled memories.
Did they do any lie detector tests, does it say? Or anything like that?
I think as the story goes on, they might.
We shall see a development.
We should see.
I see.
The Hills road trip was spontaneous, a well-earned break Barney decided the couple needed, as explained in The Interrupted Journey, a 1966 book that collaborated. Sorry, my talking's really rubbish today, but I shall try and improve my diction.
Clean slate.
A clean slate
Start from now.
Yeah.
So they collaborated this story on this book with author John G. Fuller. Barney worked a grueling night shift at the post office, driving 60 miles each way. Betty's job, handling state child welfare cases, was no easier. The little free time this biracial couple had was devoted to their church and activities related to civil rights movement. After 16 months of marriage, Betty and Barney saw this trip through Montreal and Niagara Falls as their delayed honeymoon. They left so impulsively that they had no time to go to their bank before it closed for the weekend. They got in their car with less than $70 in their pockets.
End of chapter 1.
End of chapter 1. On the last night of their 3-day trip, the tired couple sipped coffee in a Vermont diner to recharge before driving back. Barney figured if they pushed through, they could beat the wind and rains from an approaching hurricane. They left the diner around 10 p.m, estimating they could reach their red-framed house in Portsmouth, New Hampshire, between 2 a.m. and 3 a.m. at the latest.
Come on, Betty.
As they drove, strange light in the sky gave another reason to hurry.
What the hell's that?
At first it looked like a falling star, but grew larger and brighter with each mile.
That ain't no meteorite.
Barney, an avid plane watcher and World War II vet, was sure they had nothing to worry about. "It's just a satellite," he assured Betty. "It probably went off course."
I was loving his voice. That is an epic voice. Coles. Loving that.
The light seemed to move with the car as Barney steered down the curving mountain road. The light zigzagged and zagged, ducking past the moon and behind trees and mountain ridges, only to reappear moments later. Sometimes it seemed to move towards them in a game of cat and mouse. It had to be an illusion, they thought. Maybe the car's movement made it seem like the light too was moving. So it's cool that they were both seeing it. You know, they were both having this thing of it was going in between the trees and behind mountains and stuff, and like curiosity overcame them. The couple pulled over at road stops and picnic turnouts to get a closer look. Through binoculars, Betty saw. I love it that people would just carry binoculars around.
I have binoculars in my boot.
Yeah.
That's so cool.
Yeah.
I've got some in my home office, and sometimes there's a falcon that just like sits out on the thing, so I just get out in the middle of the working day.
Wait a minute, is that a falcon? I love that though.
So they pulled over at the road stop, and through binoculars, Betty saw that the white light was really an object spinning in the air.
Whoa.
Barney! She told her husband, "If you can think that's a satellite or a star, you're being completely ridiculous." She's a bit more Scottish than
She's
him.
Scottish, yeah.
He's from where is he from?
He's from like deep south.
From the deep.
He's got
south.
he's
from deep
swagger.
south,
He's got
man.
that
swagger.
He's from like Tennessee or like Alabama.
Tennessee.
Or like Kansas, you know?
Barney. So yeah, she's from Scotland.
Yeah.
She thinks it's ridiculous that he thinks it's a satellite. So chapter 3, the close encounter. He knew she was right. Barney had an IQ of 140, noted Fuller
Smart
in his
man.
book. Barney was also a pragmatic man who wouldn't give flying saucers a second thought. That's remembered by his niece, Catherine Marden, in her work Captured, the Betty and Barney Hill Experience. The night was too quiet for a helicopter, a commercial plane, or even a military jet with a hotshot pilot. He didn't want to spook Betty, but he was becoming concerned. What was this light, and why was it toying with them? About 70 miles past the diner, the object hovered just above the treetops, approximately 100 feet above them. Barney stopped the car, keeping the engine running. He shoved a handgun he'd hidden beneath the seat into his pocket and rushed into a dark field, leaving Betty in the car. What he saw was as big as a jet, but as round as and flat as a pancake. My God, what is this thing?
That's bad.
Thinking,
That's right.
This can't be real. Behind rows of windows, Grey uniformed beings seemed to look right at him, Barney recalled. He tried to lift his hand to his pistol but somehow couldn't. A voice told him not to put down his binoculars.
Not to put them down?
Yeah, so he was looking at them through binoculars, and it's like he couldn't go for his gun, and he's getting told not to take his gun.
Whoa.
Look at me, they say.
Yeah.
He had a startling thought. We're about to be captured. Yelling hysterically, he ran back to the car and barreled down the road as Betty tracked the craft, craning her head outside the car window.
What did she say?
Put your foot on it! Put your foot on it, Barney!
All right.
Okay, partner.
yeah. Shift.
Yeah, so she tracked the...
She's being possessed again.
Yeah.
Without explanation, loud rhythmic beeps sounded from the car's trunk.
Oh, that's weird.
The couple felt instantly drowsy and lost consciousness. They came to around 2 hours later and 35 miles down the road.
Whoa, that's
in
like
their
from
car.
here to Bristol.
Yeah.
Whoa.
So,
Whoa, that's
Whoa.
mental.
The last memory is her just out the window like, step on that, Barney! And him
yeah.
just like, oh no, partner. And like...
Imagine we just lost consciousness and just woke up in Bristol
loud
City Centre.
beeping, and then
Yeah.
just like... And this, you probably won't be able to see it on camera, but here's a little picture that Barney did of the craft.
That's like a freaking tambourine.
Yeah, I was
Yeah.
going to say that's like a
Can
tambourine.
you see where like all the people are, like all the little grey
Oh, yeah,
beings? So
yeah,
like
yeah.
across the front, you almost saw them as like
Right.
windows.
Right.
Do you know, what are those things on the side in the bottom picture?
Well, I think it explains this about it as well. But it says that there was like red glowing lights on either side of it, like red lights.
Right.
And he said this is the top picture is how it looked 200 feet high. And then the bottom one is this is how it looked after shifting over the highway, descending to about 100 feet over a field. So the red things like go out to the side a bit.
Right.
when
Almost
it
looks
gets
like
closer.
a drawbridge.
Yeah. So weird.
Intriguing.
Back home in Portsmouth, they tried to make sense of the night. Barney felt compelled to examine his body's lower half.
Ooh, don't we all, mate?
Both. Yeah. Generally, when you get home,
It's late.
yeah, you
It's
got to
getting
keep
late.
an eye on it.
You're at home. You're at home now.
Check for bumps.
No one but your missus.
Both seemed aware of a puzzling presence. What, in their butts or like?
I'm puzzling present in my butt.
I don't know whether they look, because it says Barney felt compelled to examine his body's lower half. Both seemed to be aware of a puzzling presence. Does that mean in their lower half or just around them?
Yeah, could be either, I guess.
Yeah.
Could be either.
Bit of both, maybe.
Any and all.
Either
Either and all. Sorry.
In the weeks and months after, Betty, an avid reader, checked out books from the library discovering the civilian UFO group National Investigations Committee on Aerial Phenomena, the NICAP. She also reported the sightings to the Air Force, worried about radiation. In coming years, with Betty suffering from disturbing dreams and Barney developing an ulcer and anxiety, the couple sought mental help. The two met with Benjamin Simon, a psychiatrist and neurologist who specialised in hypnosis, a mainstream technique at the time.
Is an ulcer that serious?
Yeah, you can have. If
It's
you have
kind
like
of
an ulcer.
It's like stomach
if you have a
ulcers and
stomach
stuff.
ulcer, then
right.
it's savagely painful.
Ulcers in your mouth or like...
Right.
Yeah, I guess it could be anywhere, really. He must have had an anal ulcer.
Oh.
Something about that.
The presence in his lower half.
Ulcerated. Through months of weekly sessions, Simon helped the couple piece together what they think had happened. A vessel had landed on the Hill's car, putting them to sleep. Afterward, grey beings walked them up a long ramp and into a spacecraft. Once inside, the Hills were separated, taking turns in an examination room that had curved walls and a large light hanging from the ceiling. Each was asked to climb up on a metal table. The table was so short, Barney's legs hung over the side. During the examinations, the beings removed Betty and Barney's clothes, plucked strands of their hair, took clippings of their nails, and scraped their skin. Each sample was placed on a clear material, not unlike a glass slide. Needles connected to long wires probed their heads, arms, legs, and spines. On one large needle, around 4 to 6 inches long, was inserted into Betty's belly. This pregnancy test left her twisting in pain. Throughout, a being Barney and Betty called the Leader watched from the side. After Betty's examination ended, the beings rushed back into their room excited. They discovered that Barney's teeth could be removed. Betty laughed, explaining that Barney had dentures, a fact of human aging the beings struggled to understand.
What, so we had dentures when they abducted him?
Yeah, so they were checking over him and that, and they got like...
it was weird.
It was weird and got excited when they had dentures.
Yeah.
Later, alone with the Leader, Betty asked where the craft had flown, admitting she knew little of the universe. The being joked with her, saying, "If you don't know where you are, there wouldn't be any point in telling you where I am."
That's fair.
Later, under hypnosis, she drew a star map shown to her on the ship. In 1965, the Hill story was picked up by a Boston newspaper. After that, everything changed. The Quiet Couple's story became the subject of a best-selling book and a movie starring James Earl Jones.
Oh, I love James Earl Jones.
Oh, I don't know who it is.
He does the voice of Darth Vader, and he's also Thulsa Doom in Conan the Barbarian. One of the best voices, I think, ever in cinema.
Yeah. The upstanding civil servants had become celebrity abductees. The model for alien abductions. The Hills weren't the first to spot a UFO or even to report an abduction, but their story did capture the nation's imagination and was so widely publicised it has helped to shape how we talk about alien encounters and abductions to this day. Before the Hills story, alien encounters were friendly, according to Christopher Badger, a professor of I just realised it's Christopher Badger as well.
No, it's not even Badger. It's not even Badger.
According to Christopher Badger,
right,
a professor of sociology,
and his friend James Fox, and their other friend Timothy Squirrel.
Some aliens even lived on Earth and commuted back on weekends.
Oh, it's a long commute, mate. Back to Alpha.
Well, my commute was long.
Jesus.
But once the Hill story became better known, abduction accounts shared certain characteristics, such as medical examinations and missing time. Aliens with large heads and big eyes, dubbed greys in UFO circles, Zeta Reticuli. Take a look at that.
A bit like our little mate over there, but grey.
Yeah. Became classic sci-fi staples in personal accounts and pop culture, Close Encounters of the Third Kind, and shows like The X-Files. The Hills story and those that came after helped pave the way for a new understanding of human experience. Richard J. McNally, a Harvard psychiatrist, puts it in this way: the alien abduction phenomenon. I should give him a voice as well, shouldn't I?
Go on.
The alien abduction phenomenon.
The alien abduction phenomenon, in my opinion, shows how sincere, non-psychotic individuals can develop beliefs about and false memories of incredible experiences that never happened. So he doesn't believe them, but he believes that it is a psychological trait that people can do unconsciously. Crazy. Experts of all stripes have tried to explain why intelligent, otherwise mentally stable people came forward with these experiences. Many psychologists say sleep paralysis and hallucinations played a role. Leading questions during hypnosis, the main way most abductees unlock their stories, could also have been, so like leading questions could have been a factor,
right,
by the hypnosis people. Those who report abduction might also see the world a little differently. According to research, one of the strongest predictors of false recall is a vivid imagination. This group scores high in magical ideation and is more likely to believe in ghosts and tarot readings, according to McNally. Some believe the Hill story was simply a myth in the making, with the supernatural meetings, vulnerable protagonists, and otherworldly journeys that are often the hallmarks of legend. Many point to the stress of being an interracial couple living in a predominantly white state in a turbulent area. The year of their
What's that got to do with
I
being
don't
abducted
know.
by aliens?
That's what I mean. It's people like making loads of excuses for it. Really,
Over rationalising it.
Yeah, the year of their hypnosis, 1964, was marked by Cold War tensions and civil rights unrest, with numerous urban riots erupting that summer.
Were they crossing a desert?
No.
I don't think a desert necessarily, but there's just really long stretches of road, isn't there, in America?
Right.
Does it say what state they were in?
Oh yeah.
Sorry, in chapter 1.
Maybe it was her accent made me think that they were in like some southern desert.
It was a winding country road in New Hampshire's White Mountains.
Okay, so it wouldn't. Yeah, so it would have been like pretty similar to the UK climate, really.
Yeah.
Around there.
So I was going to say, if it was like really hot, then heat stroke could maybe be a factor of it. But like you say,
most of
probably
the
quite
south, to be
similar
honest,
us.
is like more like swampy and stuff like that. But anyway.
So Brad Bader says, you have to be a biracial couple at a time where obviously it was not easy to be a biracial couple.
That's true.
Says Bader. Look what those aliens were, a mixture of black and white. I find that very meaningful.
Well, I guess. Yeah, in a weird way, you mix black and white, you get grey.
Yeah.
Maybe it was like a weird hallucination about them having loads of kids that lived in a spaceship.
Yeah, so I don't know.
In their brains, it was like some weird thing about...
How can they... the fact that they both shared the experience, he got his pistol out and was like thinking they're
Well,
being
was trying
followed by
to,
him,
yeah.
trying to do that.
It was
As
paralysed.
going over, and it was like a thing that was for ages they were tracking it on the road, and then they stopped and lost 2 hours
And also,
time,
as far as I'm aware...
35 miles down the road.
Yeah, and also, as far as I'm aware, when black and white people, like, mate, they don't have great children.
No. They make caramel.
Caramel. Yeah, caramel children.
Milk chocolate. Abductee stories depend on first-hand accounts, the most vulnerable form of evidence. Memories can be distorted by stress or distraction, or even manufactured. When a false memory is in place, psychologists say the brain works to fill in the details. Psychologist Michael Shermer points to paternicity, the tendency to see patterns even when
everything,
none
basically.
exist, helping us to see faces in clouds or assume that one event caused another.
I do that with everything. I always see faces and everything.
I saw when the Queen passed away the other day, instantly on social media it was just flooded with people being like, look, the clouds look like the Queen.
Oh, really?
And like 90% of them just didn't. But it was clearly people just trying to look for a pattern in it and instantly being like, oh, look, that's crazy.
Synchronicities. I like synchronicities.
Yeah.
Serendipitous synchronicities.
Oh, darling. That sounds like a good name of an album or something.
Darling.
Yeah.
Past experience also shapes human perception. Barney, a World War II vet, thought the head grey looked like Hitler and seemed menacing. Betty, meanwhile, who'd been excited to see the aliens, bantered with the affable grey.
I'm imagining this is almost like you and Meg, and I can imagine being like, alright.
And me being like...
You're like, please don't probe me.
Yeah. She's like, probe me. Would you like some quinoa? Get a bit of quinoa on that probe. Some babe,
what do you like?
who performed her medical examination. That alien even agreed to give her a book to bring to Earth with her, she said, though other crew members would later overrule that decision.
Oh,
so that would have been cool, wouldn't it, if they gave her this book and she could have took it. In this way, alien abduction and encounter stories have helped psychologists understand the human brain, its defects, and the weaknesses inherent in memory and first-hand accounts, according to Christopher French, psychologist specialising in human experience related to the paranormal. What we see and hear, especially under less than ideal observations conditions, can be very heavily influenced by our prior beliefs and expectations, wrote French
Very
in The Guardian.
nicely. That did sound exactly what I expect like a professor or something to sound like.
Yeah. But what I don't like, which is a bit annoying to me, is that like...
They've shot it down a lot, haven't they?
Yeah, it's like psychologists and that, they're saying, oh, it's helping us see the defects in humans' brain. Like, what if it's not a defect?
You're like, but what about the probes, man?
Yeah, but what about if it, actually happened and these normal people haven't actually got like defects in their brain? They just experienced something, you know?
Yeah, I do think there's like, I mean, as with all of our mysteries, there are some like intriguing things. Like the first thing that comes to mind, or some of the first things that come to mind, like the fact they had uniforms on. You don't really hear that usually with graves, do you?
No.
As they're commonly referred to.
I think sometimes you haven't. Like you've heard it, I've heard it, and it's basically saying like a really thin like uniform. So it's like that. Like the texture is like it's not like our clothing.
It's like a military
super
uniform,
thin, like and like. Really fine,
like a cat suit.
Yeah,
like a cat
and
suit.
almost like someone was describing it as like shimmering and stuff.
Right,
like a shimmering kind of like.
I also think it's really weird that the guy, James Earl Jones, not obviously James Earl Jones, the guy that James Earl Jones played,
Barney,
that's it. Barney thought that the lead alien just looked like a bit like Hitler. Like think about what you think of a grey alien, like essentially our friend in the corner, but a grey,
little green guy.
And then imagine Hitler. How can they simultaneously look like each other?
It does sound like they've added a lot of human elements to the aliens, and who's to say? Maybe the aliens would have a lot of human elements, but
Well, if you want to think, one of the things I think is really cool about the whole Alien Predator universe, you'd actually like it, man. I reckon you'd get into it more if you knew it was like this. The whole idea is that in the Predator and Alien and Engineer universe and that, there's like the Engineers, and the reason they're called the Engineers is because they're like the oldest race in the universe, and they basically like made every other race. And the idea is that they went to all these different like star systems, and they like put their DNA in the water. But because of obviously the difference in nature of every single planet, everything like evolved differently. But all it needed was that DNA in the environment of water, which obviously has like hydrogen and oxygen and that to then create life. So that the predators have emerged on their part. So that explains almost why they're similar in terms of like everything sort of has arms and legs and a head, but they're still vastly different in terms of like
where you are.
The Yautja or like predators are like very reptilian and like like savage and massive. We obviously like humans, like more like apes. Like aliens are like almost like insect-like and go around on all fours, but that's why they have that similarity in terms of like there's that key thing like head, arms, legs, and because the Engineers have that. So that's almost like quite a fascinating. I mean, that's almost like a way that you could explain, like similarities.
Yeah,
obviously in a sci-fi way.
It also reminds me a little bit of like mushrooms, like the fact that, like no, just that story of like they put it in the water of the different planets because like because spores are apparently the only some of the only organic like living matter that can like travel through space. So they so people think that mushrooms are like and they're like different from
intergalactic
every other
mushrooms.
Yeah, they're different from every other like living organism on the earth. Like the fungal, like the way that it works, it completely cohabits and it completely like lives symbiotically with like nature, helps nature to thrive, and like connects nature more. But it's the mycelium network and the network of like of fungi is completely different. It's his own class of like being, of like of
yeah.
And it was Dennis McKenna, not Dennis McKenna, Terence McKenna, Dennis McKenna's brother, was talking about a mushroom trip he had, and like he was saying that he was in communication with like the spirit of the mushroom, and it was saying about like spores traveling through space, and that basically that they would land on planets, and then they would like and that's how they
basically the same as almost like that story I said.
So they travel around the universe, actually helping planets
develop their ecosystem,
their ecosystem, evolve. They live symbiotically with whatever planet they're on. They can survive like the different atmospheres and things like that, and like and that's how they got to Earth. So it's saying that like mushrooms are actually interplanetary, and when you're tripping on mushrooms, you are actually tapping into the intergalactic computer that's connected throughout the universe of all mycelium. I was like, whoa. But that kind of
cool.
It kind of makes sense to me. If they can travel, like, what would be the best way to get around? What would be the highest technology of getting around the universe? Apart from ships and stuff and having to, it would be their own actually organic matter just traveling throughout spores throughout the universe and impregnating other planets.
Yeah.
Crazy.
I love the word impregnate.
Yeah. So anyway,
impregnating them, baby.
NICAP's scientific advisor cross-examined the couple and found their account credible. The Air Force's Project Blue Book.
I just like how the idea of, like, he just hears the story and goes, probably.
Credible. The Air Force's Project Blue Book would ultimately dismiss the story, determining the unexplained craft could be explained by natural causes, hinting that the couple hadn't seen a spacecraft but only the planet Jupiter.
Man, you'd have to be on like some crazy acid or something to be like thinking that Jupiter was like flying amongst the trees and landing on top of your car, and that there you were like looking at it through the binoculars and you could see weird little creatures looking back at you and that. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Also, what sort of super-powered freaking binoculars would you have? Do you know what I mean?
For his part, psychiatrist Simon never felt the Hills had made up their story. He concluded Betty had dreamed the abduction and Barney had absorbed her story, especially since many of the most vivid details matched the descriptions of dreams Betty had jotted down after the event. I believe implicitly in the honesty of these people, he said on a 70s radio program. Of course, another explanation is always possible. The abduction actually occurred. The Hills stuck by their story despite years of skeptics and detractors. Like many abductees, the couple never felt false memory or sleep paralysis explained what they had experienced. Betty became a known voice in UFO research and claimed she was visited multiple times in the decades to follow.
Wow. I want to know more about those encounters, man.
Yeah, it's almost like the connection's been established. Show up for tea.
Yeah, let's keep in touch.
Scare, man.
We've established a connection. Let's keep in touch.
Let's keep in touch.
I'll pop in every now and again. Can you believe those people on your planet don't believe that we've come and taken you and your husband?
Have a book.
Have a book.
And probed your butts. Remember that time we first probed your butt?
Oh, it's better.
Betty?
Actually, I don't know if it's better or not.
What?
I'm not even going to carry that train of thought.
No, please do. Please do.
It makes sense to me that
Yeah, go
whatever
on.
you're going to say is going to be great. I know. So
it makes sense to me that one of them could be, like Betty, for example, could be the one that was imagining it and then passed that on to her husband. Because there's been stuff like that before. Do you remember we spoke about the Swedish twins on the M6 and how one of them kind of lost it and then the other one almost absorbed that like mentalness for a little bit and then just took that on. That I could believe that the wife was the one that was
there's like a condition
actually
where
imagining it, and then the other one just took that and like ran with it, if you know what I mean.
I can imagine if they both were like thinking about a story or something, or it was like they through like being together like in a place and dreaming that they could do that, but to actually have like the drive. Do you know what I mean?
I know what you mean.
Rather than it being like at home, they were at home and they had this experience. It was like the whole drive.
The fact that they had like 2 hours missing.
Yeah, the 2 hours missing, and the fact that it wasn't just a quick thing. It seemed to be a whole build up to the actual moment they were abducted, and there was almost a communication with them in the ship for ages before and stuff, like rather than actually.
Do you know what's just dawned on me? You know George St. Pierre, GSP? He was like former UFC welterweight champion of the world. A lot of people consider him as like potentially like the GOAT of like MMA. One of the times he was on the Joe Rogan podcast, it might have been the first one, he never ever said anything about it before, but he said that happens to him like fairly regularly. He said, and it's usually
loses time.
He said usually in the car. He said that he'll be like driving home from training and he'll leave like the gym at like 7 p.m. And that it's like an hour and a half drive, and that then he said that he thinks, you know, it's like a 1.5 hour journey, but then he'll get home and he'll look at the time and it's 10:30 at night. And he said, he said it happens like at different times of the day, randomly, like every now and again. And he said that like he has this weird feeling that it's something to do with potentially being abducted by aliens. And he just came out and said it on the Joe Rogan podcast, and it was like this almost like this
cool.
like really like, it's like this massive exclusive, and you could tell he was almost a bit like hesitant to talk about it. And I remember, I think they might have even said this on the Joe Rogan podcast. They were saying like, imagine if that's why GSP is like so good and he's so dominant. Imagine if they're like doing some weird tests on him and they're like enhancing his physical abilities, because GSP like even admitted that in his prime he's one of those guys that's like always got a six-pack all year round, but he admits that he doesn't have a training diet at all.
Really?
So he says that like he'll leave training and go like a McDonald's. Sometimes he'll go like an entire day without eating, and then the next day he'll eat like nothing but junk food.
Really?
Yeah, and he's but he looks like he could be on gear.
Yeah.
He's got those really round-looking shoulders. You can see every muscle defined. Six-pack all year long.
Does he does train a lot.
Obviously, he works out really, really hard. Like super, super hard. But even so, there's a lot of guys that work out hard that aren't in as good shape as that. Do you know what I mean? Well, like the majority of the UFC roster. There's only like a very few. I don't think there's ever been another welterweight. That's the division that GSP was in. That was in good shape as GSP. No. And you know, I mean, they all train really hard. I'm sure there were athletes that train harder than GSP, maybe even. But he, for whatever reason, do you know what I mean? He was just super dominant as well. Like in his reign, like he was just so dominant.
I don't even know this guy. I'm gonna have to watch some videos of him.
I think you'd know him if you saw him.
Yeah.
You definitely. Like bold guy, very, very like polite and well spoken, like soft spoken guy for a fighter. Do you know what I mean? Like very intelligent for a fighter. He's not one of those guys that's like getting in people's faces and pushing stuff. People, do you know what I mean? He's like just very like it's like, it's a sport, like respect. He always like bows to his opponent. One of those guys. Really nice guy. Really cool guy. Got nothing but respect for GSP as a champion and as a human being. But I just thought that was really interesting. They said that. But imagine if they were like just somehow like tapped into almost like the genetic makeup of a human and just basically put all those physical attributes like up to 10. Because that's almost like what he was like in his career. It's like he was just so fast. His cardio was so good. He was so strong, so he could just insert his will on like everybody. But yeah, just crazy. And I remember even his like nutritionist. This was nothing to do with the alien thing, but his nutritionist was on Joe Rogan podcast, and they were saying like GSP doesn't realize how mad GSP is, because like he was like saying like, I don't think people need to worry too much about diet because I don't and stuff. And he was like, yeah, but that's because you're a freak.
Yeah.
Like most people,
you're a freak of nature.
Yeah, like if most people want to get in shape, then they have to like their diet is like the number one thing they need to get in. But because you only know what you know, and because to him he knows that he can
it's like whatever
eat
works.
a large Big Mac and 20 chicken nuggets and still be like ripped and jacked. He just assumes that everyone else can. And do you know what I mean? And he's never ever failed a drug test ever in his life. Do you know what I mean? So it's like,
that's cool, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think I'd hate to have that thing of disappear in time. I get it sometimes when I'm drunk and then I'll end up in a random place like a couple hours afterwards and I just regain consciousness. But I'd hate to have that when I was like sober. That'd be
That's
awful.
the only time I've had it is like when I've been like super smashed and just like not remembered like parts of the night or any of the night, and then people have said stuff to me and that. But the other thing is like sleepwalking. That's the other time I've had it where I've done things.
Oh yeah, true.
People have been like, oh, you did this, and I'm like, I got no. It's just scary that you got no recollection of stuff, innit? It's like,
as far as I'm aware, I don't think I've ever had that.
Yeah, that's good.
Even when I've been super wrecked.
Yeah, that's amazing.
I definitely had it after
when
wireless.
when you got lost and ended up in London.
But I've had it a couple times, I think, where it's just like time passes and then you just kind of get a moment of consciousness and you're like, where am I? And then it's like you go back to just being wrecked and can't remember anything.
Do you know, I heard a theory about, the Zeta Reticuli aliens, the Greys.
The Greys, as they are commonly known.
And like, it's just, you just hear these mad theories and I'm like, But, what we think with technology and about merging with technology and things like that.
Yeah.
I heard this account that, not an account or just a view or, like
theory.
A theory, that's it. That race of aliens
are actually robots or something.
because when anyone that's had these encounters with them, it's like there's been like they've thought this very sterile, like no emotion feeling. So they're living beings, but they've got no emotion, which is super scary to a human because it's almost opposite us. It's like to think of something that's living that doesn't have any emotion at all. Yeah, that's like sterile. That's scary. Super scary,
Yeah,
and that's why they say some of
the
these
human element. So it's literally like getting rid of the human element.
Yeah, and I think animals have it as well, but it's normally when they're humanized. So yeah, that makes sense. It's like being rubbed off by, slightly.
I don't know if it is just when they're humanised.
Yeah,
do you know what I mean? I think they're obviously wild animals are wary of humans because we're a dangerous
but they do show
species.
love to each other.
Yeah, if you watch like a documentary, even the most dangerous predators
and
play
and stuff.
you see it. Yeah.
No, that's it. And so they were basically saying that this species of like alien had like gone beyond a point of no return with technology, where their vessels and their souls that like have actually like become a part of the technology, and they've lost all like things of like.
I've heard that. Yeah.
So then they're trying to look at they're very
and
interested
recreate.
Recreate a race
because they've become sterile.
Yeah, because they're sterile, and because that's a lot of them. There's like they haven't got any
sex organs.
No, so they're almost created. They're cloned.
Yeah. And I've also heard the theory that it's like they're maybe even like time travelers from say like 1,000 years in the future.
Yeah.
And then it's like because
we must have watched the same documentary, man.
You know they say we must have.
Because I remember that now, as well. To try and save their race.
And they say that like since the 60s, like it's way more common nowadays for men to be sterile.
Yeah.
And for women as well to be barren. So it's like in the 60s, barely like 1% maybe of men couldn't have kids or couldn't produce sperm that could impregnate a woman. Now it's like 10%. Whoa. And it's only seems to be getting worse. And also it's proven that men's testosterone levels are getting lower. And you can see it as well. I've seen some really amazing comparisons, and it's like 16-year-olds in like 1955 or something, and like they all like quite broad-shouldered, have like beards and mustaches and that, and they look like big, they look like men. And then it's like 16-year-olds nowadays, and they look like boys. And it's almost like weird, man.
Yeah.
It's almost like, man, that's weird. Like,
Did you hear what Elon Musk came out and said recently on, I think it was on a podcast, or it may have just been in some sort of interview, but he was saying that he believes underpopulation is the biggest threat to humanity.
Yeah.
Which is pretty crazy.
Underpopulation.
Yeah, so that we are not producing enough babies now to keep growing the human race.
Yeah, no,
that's
so
what I thought.
It's basically it's like false rhetoric that's being pushed on us that it's like overpopulation is this massive issue. But if you've got to think about it, how can it be as much of an issue as people are making out? Our lives are like incredibly finite. Like, do you know what I mean? Our lifespan is anywhere between like a second long, not even that, to 100, say, right? So at the most, you're going to live to 100 years, okay? Apart from like the odd 0.00001% or whatever. So all it would take is like 3 generations of people having the idea of like, okay, well, let's make the conscious decision not to have kids so that we don't have overpopulation. If everyone in the West had that idea, in 100 years there'd be nobody left in the West, would there? Because there just wouldn't be. Or even if say our generation had half as many kids as the generation before us, when that's 50% less population in like 30 years' time. Then if the next generation had the same idea, then that's another 50% less. If you keep following that trend, that's dangerous. And I know loads of people myself that have said that they don't want to have kids, and one of the reasons they say is for that reason.
Overpopulation.
And that it's a shame, because it's often, in a way, it's often the most compassionate and decent people that I know that are saying these things, because I think they think it's what's best for the world. But it's the people that have that compassion and that decency in their bloodline you want to recreate, that you want to procreate, because those are the people that you want in the future. You don't just want the selfish people or the people that are just going around shagging all the women and not caring and knocking people up, because there's probably going to have more chance in that DNA, in their genetics, they're probably going to be more thoughtless, more careless, more reckless. So you're just going to end up with a world full of people like that.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? You need to encourage the intelligent people and the decent people to be the ones that are having the most kids, because we want the offspring to be like that too, because that's what's going to drive our society forward and not backwards. Not the people that are like, oh, I don't care about anything. I don't care about pollution, or, you know what I mean? We need people we want really a society of people as productive and as decent as possible. So it's a real problem. And he says it's like, along with AI, he says it's like the number one biggest issue in his mind.
I've never even thought about it, man.
I've got to say, I do question it in my own head how it would work, because it does only take one person to have 5 kids to then make up 5 people who don't have kids, and at the moment that is, most people are still having kids, I would say.
No, I disagree. I mean they're already saying that in Japan, like, they've taken it so seriously, like, in not having kids, that there's already problems happening in Japanese culture, because there's not enough people now to fill jobs and things like that.
Don't they have more, or is it in China where it's like they have more women than men kids as well?
Yeah, that's China. They have an issue. There's more women than men.
Being born.
So they actually like value males in their society more, just because there's so much more females.
Whoa, that's crazy.
But I mean look at, I know loads of, I mean you and Meg don't have kids yet. You might do, hopefully you do, it'd be lovely if you did, but it's
Josh and Claire,
and that's, I mean, who knows? But do you know what I mean? Josh, we're 32. Claire's older than us. Do you know what I mean? Time's getting on, man. So when our parents were all our age, I mean, your parents probably had all their kids.
My mum and dad had me when they were 25.
Yeah, my parents had already had 2 kids when they were my age. Do you know what I mean? Josh's mum had already had 2 kids by the time they were Josh's age. It's like lots of people. Nikki C's only got 1 kid. I've only got 1 kid.
I feel like I heard on part of this argument that Elon Musk was making that there was apparently a huge baby bloom in the 60s, I want to say. Since then,
Baby
we've
bloomers.
been sort of like, the population's been growing since we've seen the effects of that. But now it's starting, like, now that, that generation has passed and their generation's passed, it's now starting to, fall back down a bit, and that's why he's, like, more worried about it, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I mean, I think there's 2 schools of thought on, like, how to save any issues we have on the planet. There's, like, there's the nihilistic solution, which is, like, we basically need to live, like, hunter-gatherer society again. But realistically, I just don't think that's realistic, because no one wants to give up their comforts, no one wants to give up their cars and their satellite television and their internet, blah, blah, blah. And if you want to have that in society, you need everything else that comes along with it, like the bad stuff. There's either that, or there's an idea that we keep innovating until we find ways that all the best brains in our society create ways to be able to do everything we can now in a 100% clean and sustainable way. That's the other school of thought, which is the way that more like people like Elon Musk think. So, but you need people. You know what I mean? You need a lot of people to do that. You need a lot of great minds. Apart from anything else, in just a statistical way, like how many children need to be born for one of them to be as bright as Elon Musk? How many people are in the world, and how many people are even like Elon Musk? Maybe like 5.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? So it's like, just statistically, you need a lot of kids to even have the few geniuses that there are in society, because they don't come along very often. I know loads and loads of geniuses, but I don't know any Elon Musks. Do you know what I mean? So that's how rare they are. That's how rare those sort of people are.
Would it be such a bad thing if society was sustainable but just smaller? As in the population, like when you think of hundreds of years ago, 1,000 years ago, like it was less of a population. Do you know what I mean?
But then we'd have to probably give up our comforts, wouldn't we?
But why? Why wouldn't you be able to just like have less people, but just with this? It seems like if there's just more and more and more, we've got the technology, we've got the way that things are set up, it would just be that on a smaller scale.
I guess you would, but then we would have to like do an overhaul of society, because otherwise you'd end up with a lot
more room.
Yeah, but you would have to do like a complete
less cars on the road.
And that would be good.
But there'd still be cars.
You would have to do a complete overhaul of society, though, wouldn't you?
Yeah, as we know it. But
I
look for more secluded places.
I do as well, man.
I look for. For me, it wouldn't be so bad if we didn't say it wasn't as crazy, but we still did have geniuses. We still did have like really like super clever
but the population was like it was 100 years ago.
It was just smaller. And
I agree with you on that.
Space and like, but and
I agree with you on that.
Conversations.
I guess like the worry though that what Elon Musk is saying, he is saying that like if we continue with the frame of mind that we have in the West, that it will be like much worse than that. It'll be like societal collapse. Do you know what I mean? Rather than it just being like how it was 100 years ago, it will be like societal collapse. Because I guess it's almost like, do you know what I mean? It's like if you build a ship that requires X amount of people to run.
But you've only got 5
do you know what I mean? It's different than having like a small ship.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Do you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so it's like
society as we know it would collapse.
Yeah,
like, and it
you would almost see like a major overhaul of everything.
Yeah, because there wouldn't be enough people to fill out the jobs that are needed for the world.
Yeah.
I think that what concerns me a little bit as well is that obviously the Western nations are the only ones really, along with maybe like nations like Japan, that are having this thoughts. So really the rest of the world's population is still growing. Well, then it probably means, and I don't even necessarily mean in a militaristic way, it probably means our society will disappear. Do you know what I mean? Because as they expand, those people need to move into other countries. Our populations will be decreasing.
I wonder what it is with like like the military and stuff like that. You think of how the military factions helped expand the world and be the arm of whatever country they came for it.
Like British Empire.
Like my
French,
granddad was in the Navy. My dad was in the Navy, and it said like it shaped his life into the man he became.
So all the men in my family as well.
Yeah, and when you think of like society now, like how a lot less people are have the like predisposition to like want to go in the army and the navy. Like I wonder how many people are actually joining up on those.
I think almost compared. Like there's so much bad press about it now. I think it's almost like discouraged, or you almost feel like maybe some members of your friends would almost.
That seemed to be like a huge part of society back in the day.
Yeah, it was almost, like, and you would almost be. Yeah, definitely.
The ultimate honour.
Whereas I know like a lot of our people that are say friends of ours, Drew, I know that would probably, if say me and you join the army now, they'd probably think that was really bad. Not necessarily any of our friends that I really care what they think, and I don't mean that in a rude way. But there's only a few people in my life I really properly care about their opinion. Do you know what I mean? Like probably like 10 at max. So it's but do you know what I mean? I definitely can think of a lot of our friends that would think really bad. It would be like, oh,
yeah, that's what I mean. Like,
oh, it's corrupt and other stuff, and I'd be like, whereas back in the day, it would be an instant thing like bringing honour upon your family and.
So I mean, things seemed like simpler, you know, like and just like there was like a meaning behind everything, like, and it was like it was a driving force, like growing the world. But it seems to be we're at like a tipping point now where it's going in a different direction. And it's like those like the old ways are being lost, you know, and just like.
Well, I know this is like almost like a bit of a controversial thing to say, but I almost think like you have to have almost like some nations policing the world, and as like with a human being. You can't, as with an individual human being, and it's the same with a greater society like a country, you can never please everyone. So I understand that not everyone's always going to be happy about everything, but you do need almost like some nations to like police the world. Because
if the world was at like a level playing field, then you can guarantee that parts of the world would then want to be the ones to take that power and be.
Well, yeah, exactly. You need to almost like have like, so like at the moment, I guess you would say like the polices of the world are like America. And then they have their allies, which are usually in unison with them. So, like, we would be one of those countries, like Britain. Probably in the past, before America, we were probably like the British Empire, probably considered like the police of the world. And it's like, if so, at the moment, it seems like the USA is downscaling on that because obviously a lot of. There's a lot of thought processes.
You mean militaristically? Like
yeah. And I think there's a lot of thought processes that maybe like that's a bad thing to do, and there's a lot of emphasis on like the bad things that maybe like the USA or that Britain have done and stuff. But the thing is like as we regress, other countries are just going to look to fill the gap, and you can already see it a little bit. I mean, a lot of people don't think that what happened in Afghanistan or what happened in Ukraine would have happened if it wasn't for the fact that America basically showed weaknesses a couple of times, like chinks in their armor, so to speak. So maybe that could have, because maybe they were so had a healthy respect and almost like fear for the USA before, they were like, we can't do this because the USA is going to come down on us hard. When it almost like became clear that wasn't going to happen, things start to happen. There's real bad concern at the moment that China's going to invade Taiwan like any day. Taiwanese people are like some of the best peaceful people in the world. That's where the Dalai Lama is from Taiwan. Just a nation of like peaceful Buddhist people, really. But it's almost like hopefully I'm wrong, but it's almost like a given that at any point China might invade Taiwan, and it's almost like they think, well, look at what happened in Afghanistan. The Taliban taken back over after like 20 years of American and British and French army policing the region. You know, women were going to school, women could play sports. Now instantly, women can't even leave the house again now without male supervision, which is crazy. The Taliban have taken back over Afghanistan. A war has now been raging in Ukraine for like months and months and months. There's entire cities that are just rubble. Do you know what I mean? And it's like things. Do you know what I mean? My whole point is like, look at what's happening already. Like there's going to be, as soon as there's a vacuum of power, someone's going to try and fill that. And it's you can see that already with say like Russia and China. That's not anything to say that I think like Russian people are bad or Chinese people are bad. But it's, as I said, it's just natural human nature. Avoid if you leave a vacuum, something's going to fill it. And I'd rather, from my point of view, it was the USA and Britain and Australia and all those countries than the others because of my personal ideologies, but the way that I think that people should be treated and the way that I was brought up that people should be treated obviously are the same as the ideologies naturally of my country and of other countries in the West, like European countries and America, on the whole, freedom of speech, equal gender, things like that. Women shouldn't have to like do everything her husband says. A woman can play sport. A woman can get a job as a CEO, as long as it's it's equal playing field. As I said, as Jordan Peterson always says, what's it? It's equality of opportunity.
Yeah,
equality of opportunity, not equality of outcome.
Yeah, it's interesting. I know that some of the struggles that are more, rather than like on a like militaristic thing and like kind of morals and stuff, but just like for money. Like I don't know where the IMF comes from, but I've been reading a lot of stuff.
What does that stand
like
for?
the International Monetary Fund.
Right.
So it's something to do with like the banks and like a huge like pot of wealth basically, and where the IMF are. They can implement certain like rules and regulations for that country and stuff. So basically, there's like I think like Bangladesh is one, and like Peru, Argentina, and countries around the world that are like really struggling and like with the whole fuel situation and everything like that, and their inflation is like high here, but inflation in some of these countries, like I think Argentina, it's like 70% or something inflation. Like you can't even imagine it. Like that's on everything. Jesus. And people are out on the streets. I think Sri Lanka is another one.
What's the country
so it's just that the IMF are like going to these places and basically giving them like billion funds.
Wow.
Like so I'm not giving them, but it's a loan. So they're giving them a loan to these countries, and I don't know enough about the IMF. But what you're talking about you know being an overlord going in that way and imposing rule in that way, which is a more militaristic thing. I know that there's things happening in the world with other countries that are like really kind of like down or like not at the same like level. They're more third world countries that are getting these huge injections from the IMF. But then with that, that country then has to abide by the rules of the IMF. But I don't know whether the IMF is an American thing or if it's a British thing. I'll have to look that up because it just reminded me when you were saying like this is a way of like almost arming out your rule across the world by basically bailing people out, but then they have to do what you say.
International Money Fund. What is the IMF?
Is it I don't know whether it's a group of nations that own it, but I was like reading about it, and it was like really crazy because there's a lot of countries at the moment with this whole crisis that's happening and everything that are getting these huge bailouts from the IMF. But what this guy was saying is like it's pretty crazy because then it means that they're going to be under the control of.
It says they're a global organisation that was established in 1944, so the year before the end of the World War II. In the aftermath of the Great Depression of the 1930s, 44 founding member countries sought to build a framework for international economic cooperation. Today, its membership embraces 190 countries, with staff drawn from over 150 nations. The IMF is governed by and is accountable to those 190 countries that make up its near global membership.
Okay.
Right. So it's not owned by one particular place. It's just
it's something more like.
So it's almost like the United Nations.
United
Nations or something like that. Yeah.
What's the country that it's either a country or city, and I remember seeing recently that pretty much the entire thing has like a homelessness problem because no one can afford to pay the rent of any of the flats or buy houses in that country or city. I want to say maybe it was in China, but I could be wrong.
China's going through an absolutely like crazy like housing crisis thing at the moment.
I think that might be what I'm thinking of.
Yeah. And it's like people are saying that's going to bring in the next like massive event that collapses the economy.
Yeah.
What, in China?
Because they can't.
They reckon it's going to collapse China's economy.
No one can afford any houses, can they?
It's going to be like this crazy. Because at the moment it's like
I'll type in biggest housing crisis on the planet and see what happens. Biggest housing crisis in the world.
There is so I know something. There's been like loads of protests and that, but around the world there's like loads of protests at the moment.
I remember hearing that our media is trying to keep it quiet.
Yeah, this is what I mean. I hadn't heard about it much, but then you look at it and you can actually watch the videos and stuff. And that was one I was looking at, like Argentina and Peru. Like I'd been to Peru and I was thinking, like, thank God, loads of people have been stranded. There's like 6 people been killed in the protests on the streets and that. And just that was something to do with the government, though. They were trying to oust the government because of like inflation and the fact
the Chinese people trying to oust the government.
And this is in Peru.
Oh, sorry, the Peruvian. Right.
Yeah, I remember hearing we're trying to keep it quiet because our like media and government is worried that if it gets out and is like the biggest public news as it should be at the moment, then it could make our inflation even worse and our market even worse.
just found this article from the World Economic Forum that says the housing crisis could impact 1.6 billion people by 2025. The World Bank says shortages of land, lending, labour and materials are some of the factors fueling the housing crisis. The world needs to build at least 96,000 new affordable homes every day to house the estimated 3 billion people who will need access to adequate housing by 2030. Efforts to build more affordable homes are underway in countries including the United States of America, India, Scotland and Africa. Housing is a basic human need, but a lack of affordable housing to buy or rent is fueling a global housing crisis.
See, that suggests the problem of overpopulation, doesn't it?
Yeah, I think the Elon Musk's point was more in the West rather than globally.
Yeah.
In most countries, the cost of housing has grown faster than incomes. I think that's clear, like insanely clear.
And this is another thing that sketched me out as well. I was like, what is the word for it? Right, I hope it comes to me. But basically, you know, like subscriptions and everything.
Mm-hmm.
So that there's a plan for things that you now own, like mobile phones and hardware, cars, housing. In the future, it'll all be like subscription based. So you won't actually own anything. As in,
what
like,
would happen? What about the fact we already own, like for people that already own properties?
Yeah, that's what I mean. I don't know. I think properties is more in the future. But this guy was talking about how things are. It will start with things like phones, because there's a lot of people like that, you know, at the moment like can't afford like phones, like really good phones, or like or computers, stuff like that. So he's saying that people will like lap it up and they'll eat it up, because at least then they'd be able to afford it, because it'd be very like cheap, like it'd be like a lot cheaper to pay a monthly payment, not like a monthly like payment like we do now, which is like where you own the phone at the end. It's like where you like, apparently Apple are going to do it within the next like year or 2 years or something with iPhones.
Microsoft have already done it with all their games, haven't they? Nowadays, like people don't buy. So, for example, the Xbox I bought, you can't buy games individually for it on like hard discs. You just pay a monthly subscription to Xbox Game Pass, and it has like hundreds of games on there.
That's crazy.
But that, like, you don't actually own the game. So if you stop paying the subscription,
I don't like that. I'm old-fashioned. I want to own something.
This is what I mean. But he's saying about like how society is going that way. That's just the next step that is like slowly happening to us without us realizing it so much, or without. And it's like, and there's that quote. It's like, you will own nothing and you'll be happy. And this is like what he's saying is like going to happen, like with phones, like cars and that. And at the moment where people can't, and what you said about housing, like how people can't afford housing, like if you know, it was a lot cheaper than say renting a house, but you were just like, you know, could be in this real nice house, and it meant you could be in that house. People were going to be like, yeah, I want to be in that house. And
I guess it's just almost like something in the back of your head that feels like it could be taken away from you.
Yeah,
that's
it
the
is.
thing that's weird. Whereas if you own something, by law, no one can take that away from you.
Yeah, exactly.
It says here, in a study of 200 cities globally, now 90% of people found it unaffordable to live in them. So 90% of people, that's insane. With the average home costing more than 3 times the average household's income. That is absolutely crazy. And then it's got like a little graph here of, it says house prices have grown faster than incomes in most countries. And then it's basically got this graph, and it's like income compared to how much it costs to live in these places. And it says here on this graph, I don't know, from the looks of things, it doesn't even, it doesn't include
next
China.
to Denmark.
Luxembourg is the worst place to live, it says. And then Portugal, and then Canada, Czech Republic, Iceland, Germany, New Zealand, Netherlands.
Has China right at the bottom, interestingly, on that one.
Yeah, so it says in this one that China is actually like affordable. We are basically middle of the pack. Bit worse. Bit to the left. Yeah, crazy stuff. I mean, I do think it's mad now to almost think how not like easy. It swings and roundabouts, because obviously they had really hard childhoods because they were still alive during the war, but almost like in terms of the fact that when my granddad was in his 20s, he could just like buy a house outright for $3,000 or whatever. And do you know what I mean?
People would have like 25-year mortgages on $3,000.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? Like, because it is like the affordability of it. Yeah. Like, I know my nan and granddad. I think there was like their bungalow in Canada was like $2,000 or $2,500 or something. But they had like a mortgage like I had on my place, but like on that, you know, it's like so different back then.
It's just like, yeah, I mean, how many? Because the thing is, they weren't like especially well-off people.
No.
But by today's standards, like, because their houses they've got a 4-bedroom house in the nicest part of town, with a front garden and a back garden and a driveway. Like, how many people live in a house as nice as that? Do you know what I mean? It's like one of the nicest houses. Of everybody I know, they have one of the nicest houses.
Yeah.
In terms of like plot, overall land, bedrooms, etc.
Yeah.
But as I said, they were just like a pretty
normal
thing. Pretty normal.
As in, like, it was there was less people, but things were like you say, like built to last when it was like back then, and it was like less, but it was more grand and stuff. And
thing is, I think that you could get into like so many different reasons. I mean, I know that like a lot of traders and stuff, old school traders, really don't like the fact that nowadays, like back in the 60s still, most stuff was produced in the UK, whereas nowadays most stuff is like bulk supplied from usually places like China, isn't it?
Yeah.
And in general, the idea is that the quality of things are worse, probably because the people there are working in really bad conditions, really long hours, and probably aren't getting as good training as, say, somebody that worked in the 60s in the UK would have had working in a factory. Do you know what I mean? They would have probably had way better rights, would have probably been way happier in their environment. And obviously, if you're not bulk, well, it's a bit like guitars nowadays. But all the best like Les Pauls and Strats and stuff used to be hand built, whereas now it's that they're churning them out more in factories. And even though they're still considered, premier guitars, people just don't think of them as the same, do they?
No.
And the playability isn't as good. It's just not. So that's a perfect example of almost like everything. I mean, I heard it like last time we had a plumber over. He was even saying, like getting parts nowadays. He's like this old fella from Stowey. And he was saying like the parts now just don't last. He said he'll like fit a part in like a house, and then 2 years later you have to go replace it. Whereas he said back in the 70s, he'd replace a part from like a British manufacturer's, and it would last like 30 years.
Yeah.
Crazy.
Man, it is crazy.
Yeah. So I think there's so many different reasons.
So that's all a bigger reason for me of just like smaller but better quality. Less people, but like make that instead of doing 1,000 things in the factory. Do 50.
Yeah, for sure.
I mean, I don't know. Like, I literally have just gotten up a little clip of Elon Musk talking about it. Do you want to quickly hear a minute of it?
Yeah.
So let me, I'll end our sci-fi music now.
Aliens are
What is the biggest challenge ahead of us? In general, not only with regard to AI. What is the biggest problem that needs to be solved?
What's the biggest threat to humanity's future or something? Well, AI is certainly one of the biggest risks. It could be the biggest risk. I think we need to watch out about population collapse. This is somewhat counterintuitive to most people. They think that, well, there's so many humans, maybe too many humans, but that's just because they live in a city. If you're in an aircraft and you look down, they say, if you dropped a cannonball, how often would you hit a person? Basically never. In fact, there's stuff falling in from space all the time. Natural meteorites, old rocket stages, all the time. But nobody worries about it because the actual... In fact, there's a good cool website called Wait But Why, and this guy Tim Urban, like, he actually just did the math, and all humans on Earth could fit in the city of New York. On one floor. Don't even need the upper floors. So that's actually the cross section of humans as seen from Earth is extremely tiny, basically vanishingly small, almost nothing. So we need to watch out about population collapse. Low birth rates, I think, is a big risk, and it's also not exactly top secret. You can go look at the Wikipedia, birth rate. So, and this is actually this is definitely the civilization ends with a whimper, not a bang, because it would be a sad ending, where the average age becomes very high, and really the youth are effectively de facto enslaved to take care of the old people. This is not a good way to end.
Do you have any new projects dealing with these topics that you've just addressed?
Well, I'm trying to set a good example on the kid front.
He's got loads of kids, isn't he?
Yes.
Is he?
6 kids.
For now.
6 kids for now.
How much time do you spend with them?
I spend about as much time as they want to spend with me. So
Would they? Yeah.
I mean, they're not. Well, one's just a baby, and the others are 14 and 16, and teenagers don't usually want to hang out with their parents that much. You know, we just had Thanksgiving weekend, so all the kids were over. So if they want to spend more time with me, I say like, I actually ask them, "Are you sure we don't want to hang out more?" They're like, no. So I think it's probably the right amount then, since they don't want to hang out more. So I think we really should take this seriously. The population collapse, artificial intelligence, obviously sustainable energy is important. The faster we transition to sustainable energy, the less of a gamble we're taking with climate. And I think there's going to be a lot of breakthroughs on the medical front, particularly around synthetic mRNA. You can basically do anything with synthetic RNA, DNA.
That's so cool.
It's like a computer program. So
wow.
I mean, I think with enough, with effort, that's not too crazy. You could probably stop aging, reverse it if you want.
Reverse it.
You can basically do it. You can turn someone into a freaking butterfly if you want with the right DNA sequence. So
that's mad.
I mean, caterpillars do it.
He's got 10 kids, by the way.
10 kids now.
10
10 kids.
Yeah, that was off the YouTube channel Tech and You, by the way. Just
nice.
Yeah, so interesting. Anyway, just food for thought. Should we end there? Anybody want to add anything before we leave for today? I like how we started off on a mystery and then just almost ended up with just like a normal Pandora's box episode.
Yeah. Happens sometimes, man.
Oh,
yeah, definitely.
Gotta be done.
Yeah, anything else anybody wants to add before we leave?
Mysteries make my heart feel warm.
There we go. And we hope it was made your heart feel extra tingly as well.
Tingleberry.
Extra tingly. Ribbed for her pleasure. Have a good week, everyone. We'll see you next time for more Mystery Monday.